Aloha, everyone. Good morning. Hope you guys are all doing fabulous. Thank you again for joining me on my audio blog here. Let's jump right into it. I have a whole bunch of questions, and I want to do my best to get through as many as possible. However, you guys know me. I like to be thorough with the questions and whatnot, so I want to make sure that I get all the way through everything. And again, hope you guys are having a fabulous holiday season and really just enjoying the time with family and friends. I have been, and I hope you guys are too. Okay, here's a question. How can I control my emotions as they jump up sometimes? That confuses me. Or is it that my subconscious slash unconscious is telling me it's time to deal with something that I need to deal with? Love your blog and love the work that you do. Thank you very much. And I love what I do and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, too. It's a good question. There's a couple of things to look at here. First of all, we have tended to, in Western society, make it negative or bad if you have emotions that pop up out of nowhere. To be considered an emotional person or an emotionally erratic person in some circles is considered to be bad. Now, if you're sitting there going, yeah, in my family it was okay, in my culture, no, I know. There are always exceptions to the rule. And generally, if you what are some terms that they use? Fly off the handle, venting, popping a gasket. One of my friends used to say, oh, he's about to pop a gasket. And those usually tend to have to deal with emotions, that your emotions just pop up out of nowhere. What kind of emotions are you talking about? If you're talking about positive emotions, well, positive emotions, if all of a sudden out of nowhere you're overjoyed, extreme overjoy, over happiness, it's like you're just thrilled to be alive. Okay, well, no problem. I think that's a good thing. Now, what Huna teaches is that there's a trickle down effect. So first, let's tackle the whole how do we gain a little bit more control over our emotions. So from a Huna perspective, there's a trickle down effect. That means that energy, spirit, higher consciousness, whatever label you want to give it, affects your thoughts. So energy affects your thoughts. That's the mental aspect of who you are. Then the mental aspect of who you are, your thoughts, affect your emotions. That's the emotional nature of the individual. And then our emotions affect our physical body. Now, that's pretty much from a Huna perspective. From a psychological perspective, it's called the mind-body connection. That is that your mind and body are connected. And if you've done further research, and I highly recommend, if I haven't said this already on my audio blog, I highly recommend Dr. Bruce Lipton's book on the biology of belief. Absolutely validates and shows that energy affects your cells first and foremost, even before the chemical reaction that occurs from thoughts. So energy is a huge part of this equation as well. Now, two big things to understand. One is that our emotional nature, our emotional qualities are different than our mental qualities. And it is a part of our emotional nature to have emotions kind of swell or move like a wave. That's why in many ancient cultures, the emotional aspect of who you are was related to the element of water because it fluctuated. Emotions fluctuate, kind of like the moon fluctuates, like the tides fluctuate. So one of the things to gain a greater level of control over your emotions is to learn your emotional nature. So how do you learn about the emotions? The second one is to learn about the energy that filters down and is related to the emotional aspect of who you are. So to become more familiar with the energy of the water element, how this fluctuation affects you as an individual. Each person is different. Think of each person kind of like each place on this entire planet. I live in Hawaii, and we are much more affected by the ocean here than, let's say, someone that lives in a landlocked area in the middle of Australia. Someone that lives in the middle of Australia that doesn't have a lot of water around, or in the middle of the US or Canada or any region that doesn't have the ocean, then that land isn't as affected by the ocean as, say, someone that lived right next to the beach. Well, just like that analogy, some people are more emotional than others, men and women. Some women tend to be more emotional than other women. Some men tend to be more emotional than other men. And so one thing is learning the general understanding, the general concept of your emotions and your emotional nature, and then learning about the energy. That way, the trickle down effect is working properly. Energy to mental to emotional. Yeah. By mentally knowing how you are emotionally in general, that gives you a greater level of control over your emotions. Then the next thing is to learn you. Like I said, you got to learn you, your own emotional qualities. Are you an emotional person? Learn how to ride those emotional waves rather than getting battered around by them. Accept who you are. That's the other thing. Yeah, I make a joke sometimes about my son and my daughter. My son is sometimes so much more emotional than my daughter. And that's neither a good thing nor a bad thing. But he asked me one time, he said, Dad, I'm way more emotional than other guys in sixth grade, and I'm way more emotional than Skylar. Was that good or bad? It's not good or bad, Ethan. You just need to learn how to ride that wave and accept who you are, because that's a good thing. It's a good thing that you have emotions and that you want to gain a greater level of control over them. So having said that now, in the question there was another thing about, is that your subconscious or unconscious wanting you to release it? And that answer is really simple, yes. If your unconscious mind presents to you, and this comes from a more Huna perspective, probably a little bit more of a humanistic psychology if you're looking for the more Western approach, humanistic psychology, transpersonal psychology, even more in the studies of psychoneuroimmunology. And from a Huna perspective, when your unconscious mind or your subconscious presents to you negative emotions, then these negative emotions are ready to be resolved. They are ready to be expressed. This expression can be venting, letting it out. It's like a story that I tell at every one of our Huna workshops. When Uncle George was explaining to me about, how things were before, he said, in ancient times, if a person was angry, they'd scream. If they were sad, they would cry. Maybe they'd go down to the ocean and just let those emotions out. Atua, my kumu, my teacher of hula, said, in ancient times, if someone felt an emotion, maybe they would chant, and that chant would help them to release. Yeah, they didn't push it back down like we do in Western society. In Western society, we sometimes take that emotion and just attempt to rebury it and push it back down. And the lesson here is that one of the ways that your unconscious mind functions is that when you are ready to deal with something from the past, or when you have new tools and techniques that would allow you to deal with these things from the past, then these emotions will be presented to you. Papa Bray, the person that taught my father, Huna, used the analogy of a black bag, and he said, when you have an emotion that you don't know how to deal with, you take the energy of that emotion and you put it down into a black bag and you store it somewhere in your neurology. And someday when you're ready to deal with it, that black bag opens up and you're ready to release it. You're ready to let it go. So I say, rather than pushing it back down, acknowledge the fact that you've hit a milestone in your life. You've achieved another level. You're now ready to deal with that. So deal with it. Whether that's doing ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian forgiveness process, whether that's talking to the person involved, or doing a ho'oku'u, a release, whatever it is that you need to do that. And that will enable you to then release that negative emotion and move forward. And so I hope that kind of answers the question. I hope that kind of tackles the whole emotional idea of that. And I hope you guys are all having a fabulous day. I got a handful of emails yesterday just thanking me and just so grateful of doing these audio blogs. And you know what? I just want to express my gratitude and my thankfulness for you guys making it possible for me to do this. I say that to every group that I teach, and I mean it from my heart. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you so much. And I truly do appreciate the time you're taking to listen to these. Keep sending me questions. It's the only way to keep the blog going. And I know I made a joke. I have a backlog of questions, and keep sending them to me. One person emailed and said, I'll hold my question. No. Send it. And because I group them together. And if I get a whole bunch of one type of question, I tackle that one first. And then I kind of go in chronological order after that. So anyway, hope you guys are all doing well and take care. Let's wrap up our audio blog like we always do. Malama pono, we all stand in righteousness. Aloha keakua, love is our shield. And oh, I wanted to add one thing to it. I wanted to add Skylar's quote. I want to try to remember to put Skylar's quote in here. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to do your best. And so remember that. And aloha ahui ho. Class dismissed. Love you all. Talk to you again soon.